Bien, mesdames et messieurs, bonjour à toutes et à tous. Je suis heureux, par l'intermédiaire de la presse, de m'adresser une nouvelle fois aux Françaises et aux Français.
Should there be a 20 to 30 billion pounds black hole, tax rises aren't the only option of the government, because that's what Rachel Reeves is expected to do. She's expected to raise taxes by that amount, so he's putting out another course.
Difficile en ce moment, mais on ne peut pas être Premier ministre.
I just want to take you to Paris, where the French Prime Minister Sebastien Lecornu is giving a statement. He, of course, resigned just 26 days into his premiership.
The conditions to enable us to adopt a budget for France or the state for social security and meet some of the urgent things that cannot wait: the presidential election of 2027, day-to-day security, the purchasing power of our French people, the situation in New Caledonia, the French army, and so many other important subjects. Over the last 3 weeks, I haven't spoken publicly very much. I've tried to build a path with both the employer organisations and the employee trade unions on issues that have caused a number of obstacles and blockages over the last few weeks and months. Pensions, tough work careers and working women, key issues that are difficult but for which we were starting to find concrete solutions: unemployment benefits, the finances of the social security system, to make sure that the demonstrations that were held in the countries wouldn't prevent us from working in partnership. This time that I spent with the political parties, the common base supporting President Macron, and the opposition parties, which would have a big say over the fate of the government and the country through their decision to accept or not the budget. These discussions, these consultations, some of which were rather discreet, have enabled us to move forward on a number of issues. I said on Friday that in the private discussions, some of the red lines become orange or green. Some of the discussions were moving forward in unemployment benefits or questions of fiscal justice, tax justice, or pensions. We felt that the lines were moving every time we moved forward, and I'll come back to that in a moment. On Friday, I reached the conclusion that the Parliament should always have the last word. Article 49.3 of our Constitution was always a way of ensuring a majority in the mindset of President de Gaulle. And the use of this measure gave French people the sense that the parliamentary process was not going through fully. This Monday morning, it appeared that I couldn't continue in my role as Prime Minister and stand before the National Assembly tomorrow for 3 reasons. First reason is that these political parties seem not to see the deep change in the fact that I don't want to use Article 49.3 of the Constitution. There was no reason for prior vote of no confidence. There was no reason for parliamentarians not to do their jobs, to discuss the bills before them, to amend them, or to decide to vote to adopt or otherwise a text. This was something that has been highlighted by a number of observers of our political life. But this observation hasn't enabled the parties to say we can do things differently, we can build in a different way. The second thing that I noticed was that our political parties are continuing to adopt a stance that suggested that they all had an absolute majority in the National Assembly. They seem to want to make compromises, but it seems like actually what happens is that they want the other parties to accept all of their programme. That's true of the centrist bloc, but also of the other parties. The opposition parties decided not to join the central bloc in government, but they didn't want to adopt compromises. Mindsets need to change to accept that parties don't see the whole of their manifesto programmes applied. The third thing was that the discussions within our centrist bloc weren't very easy to put together a future government, particularly in view of the future presidential election. I have already said, and I shall say it again, even though this is the most parliamentary period of the Fifth Republic, we need to make sure that we don't relive the bad old days of the Fourth Republic. So the way we work under the current constitution is that the Prime Minister is appointed by the President of the Republic. My final message to the French people is to give a message of hope. I don't think it will take a lot for it to work. I said here, we'll get there. We will manage to do it. I think it won't take very much for us to get there. We'll need some people to be a little bit more unselfish, a little bit humbler. Some egos might need to shrink a little bit. I tried to do this in my role. I think what is the most important is the public interest. We need to consider that there are some things that will need to be done before 2027. Other things will take place during the discussions in the lead up to the presidential election. A lot of people talk about their red lines. Not everyone, I should say that, but there are very few green lines. But if we are to build a compromise between political parties, we need to bring together green lines and take into account a few red lines. But we can't be in both extremes. Some political parties have understood this. I thank them for their efforts. We need to move forward with those who want to find a pathway forward for our country. And my final point, let me say this very respectfully, I am an activist personally, and I have moved through the echelons of French society as a mayor, as a senator, as a political representative. Let me say, we need to always choose country over party, always think about the French men and women that we represent. Thank you very much.
Did you read the time sketch on? So funny. Oh, well, there you go. The statement there from the Prime Minister, or former French Prime Minister, I should say, Sebastien Lecornu, who resigned after just 28 days. Of course, politics in France very unstable at the minute after the hung parliament, difficult to get any agreement to push through policies or budgets, and crucially cabinets as well, because that was what has really blown up there. Sebastien Lecornu announcing his cabinet, which was pretty much unchanged since one of the previous Prime Minister, to fierce criticism, and then just a day or so later he has resigned, with the statement that you saw there from Sebastien Lecornu.